I'm just making sure. So I'm getting all the technical. Thanks. Lots of thumbs up. That's great.
Hey, and raise your hand if you know
I mean, it was.
Sorry, Jason.
I know a few people there. So yeah. Okie doke. Well, okay, it's just me. I'm just watching. Firstly, I'm just going to get it out there and just say I've been quite nervous about presenting in this format, because this right now is the first time I've done that, and I thought, what the hell is it going to be like? And I'm much more used to being there physically, live, in person, walking around the space. Ideas sort of come to me because I'm physically in the space and I'm dealing with you, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a great and wonderful experiment. So I'm just going to put it out there from the very start. I'm quite nervous, but now that I've started talking, I'm not so nervous. So that's quite a good thing. What I've just noticed, because I've sort of been sitting in the background listening on to this conversation, I'm just, in awe of the opportunity that you have here to be able to talk to practitioners about their work and their ideas behind their work. This is just extraordinary stuff, and something that it was very hard to access when I was your age. I think I was brave enough when I was your age to go up to a fellow called Lloyd Newson, who runs a company called DV8 Dance Theatre in England, and ask him these questions. And he was nice enough to sit down and talk to me about those sorts of things. But in an education perspective, this is just fantastic. Anyway, enough about that. So what I'm going to talk about is very different to what I thought I was going to be talking about at the start of the year. Firstly, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jason Lehane, and I'm one of the things, a lot of you would know me as being the technical manager at Student Theatre in the campus centre. Working alongside Yvonne there, but I also have been working in the theatre industry for nearly 40 years. It's frightening. I started at a young age, let's say. And like you, like many of you, I started out as a performer. I went to St Martin's in the early 80s when it was a really cool place to be, and they didn't mind having over 18-year-olds there. And then after doing that for about 3 years, I worked, we started making theatre companies with my compatriots, and eventually I went into directing, and then I went into designing. And so probably for the last 20 years, I've focused a lot more on being a designer. I like directing and designing, and I'm going to attempt to show you, because I'm going to go straight in and do some screen sharing, just to show you some images of what I'm talking about and some of the work that we've done. So how lighting and doing what you're doing at the moment, and your shows, your presentations that will be coming up. In the theatre, lighting is very much designed for the human eye. And the work that you're doing, it is designed for a camera and a lens. It is more film than it is theatre. You can probably tell by the way I'm appearing here that I've had a little bit of a think about where light comes from on me, and creating a sort of, let's say, a somewhat neutral background to focus attention onto me. So in some ways, what I'm already doing is performative by making those kinds of choices there. So I did have a black curtain. I thought I'd throw it up behind me. And I've shut out all the light in the little room that I'm in, except for the light that's directly in front of me there, that's looking outside. And, the greatest light source, and I can see it in most of the images of you that I can see on Zoom, is the sun. I mean, it's going to be the most powerful thing. I tried to close all the curtains I could here and try to make a completely dark space, but I couldn't do it because the light would just sneak in little cracks there, and the lenses and the camera lenses are just so sensitive that they'll pick those things up. So rather than at this stage talking about the technicalities of how we're going to do that, because I'm not 100% sure how you are going to be presenting these performances. I mean, it will be a film thing that will exist and you'll download that, but I'm not sure how you will be doing that. Whether you will be there talking, whether you will illustrate something, whether you will just film the night sky, hopefully. And good luck with that. So I'm going to start off with a basic philosophy of lighting, because I think a lot of us go straight to what are we doing? What are we going to use? What do I have on hand? And that's all well and good. I mean, I have a big old theatre and actually have a lot of equipment here, which I took from the theatre because I didn't know when I was going to be back. And that's, great stuff, great stuff to access there, but you can get a little bit bogged down with what you have. And really, we need to start much earlier on than that. So here's me attempting to share my screen. It's on files, isn't it? No, basic. I could draw it.
On the bottom bar, you should have a share screen button.
Yeah, I'm pressing that at the moment. I saved a whiteboard. Can you see my whiteboard screen at the moment?
There it is.
No, you can?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I can't find it, so I'm going to draw it for you while we speak. So this is all very exciting. So I'm going to draw a circle there. That's all very good. And I'm going to put some text in the middle there that will say that and a question mark. And then I'm going to draw another circle, which is a bit bigger than that. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to draw a circle, please. Yep. And I'm going to move that there. And I'm going to write this. Right. And I'm going to draw another circle. It needs to be slightly bigger. Oh, it's a bit strange shaped. Here you go. Right. That is the basic process by which I come to a lot of my designing, a lot of my theatre creating, certainly lighting designing. I start off with the concept of why. I mean, why we need light. And I remember asking a friend of mine who was a sound designer if she could come and work on my show and work as a sound designer. And she answered it with an interesting question, which was, yes, I'll come and see if it needs it. So from the very outset, she was saying it may need sound. You may have enough sound happening in the space already that I don't need to do anything. So I like to start off with the concept of why do we have light? Why do we have darkness? So I suppose a question I could ask you is why do we have light? Why do we have light on stage? Why do we have light? You can call out if you want to, or I can tell you.
So you can see what's happening?
I'm going to see. That's correct. Absolutely. So you can see, you have light, so you can see, and you have, so an audience can see what's happening on stage. They can see what you intend them to see. I actually have seen a show which took place totally in the dark. I remember Robert Reed was in that, who writes for Witness. And it was upstairs at the storeroom, and which was an old theatre, which was in North Fitzroy, and it was just totally in darkness the whole time. But actually, by the end of the show, you could see so much more than you could at the start. At the start, it seemed very dark. In the end, you could make out figures and things like that. But that's the only time I've seen total darkness or no use of light in a performance. But I suppose the obvious question beckons here, which is like, why wouldn't we use light? Why wouldn't we use light in a show?
So we don't see stuff.
That's absolutely correct, Con. That's you, Con, isn't it? I can't even. That's true. Basically, we don't want to see things. Essentially, what we're doing is we either want to see a thing or we don't want to see a thing. So, for example, if I'm going to, let's say, I'm going to stop sharing this screen for a moment. Hello, everybody. Then I want you to just see me. So the light is on me. I don't want you to see what is behind me. So it's as far as I think you're concerned, it's black and it's infinity. So we're trying always to control the light as much as we can by choosing to direct the audience's gaze to where we place light and away from where the darkness is. So it's a focusing point. So what says my internet connection is unstable. Hopefully, I'll stay on. So I want you to always come back to that thought, as in what do we want to see? What are we looking at? What are we examining? And yeah, how? I mean, I suppose, which is the next. I mean, if we decide that we want to use light in a show, and so we're not going to be doing that Robert Reed show, which took place in total darkness. How are we going to use it? In what kind of way? So, for example, you've decided, okay, I've got to do this piece on Orion. Am I going to do that outside? Am I going to do it inside? How am I going to do this piece? So once you decide that you are going to work with light, then you've really got to figure out how. Well, the same way, if you're going to not work with light, you've got to figure out how as well. Now, if you work with no light at all, then we can't see anything, so that's probably not going to work. But how you work with darkness, and I'm going to just do a bit of a demonstration here at the moment. So I'm going to duck out of the screen, but I have a wireless microphone on and you still be able to hear me quite clearly. Look, I'm prepared. So I'm going to close those curtains so you can't see. Ooh, see, there's still a lot of light coming from the screen, from my own screen as well. You get, quite a lot of bounce back from that. So let's try to close that a bit. Okay, that's a bit darker. So if I want to bring up the light, probably not that one because it's a bit of a front light there. But even that's just what you can see there is just a bit of light from the screen and a bit of light sneaking around in a darkened room. It's quite fascinating to create that. I don't know how many of you are thinking, maybe I'm going to use my iPhone, maybe I have a camera, maybe I'm going to use a laptop, maybe I'm going to use an iPad. But there will be still some, I mean, obviously if you're using a computer like I'm doing at the moment, there's just light that comes from the screen. And you can use that to your effect. Just sometimes it is very difficult to control light, but in the darkness you can create a sense of mystery. So I'm just showing you that. as opposed to, I'm going to bring up just the front light. So that brings me much more up. You can see me fairly clear. Actually, I've got about 3 lights on me at the moment. Just a technical issue, obviously, your camera and your lens is going to be constantly adjusting at some stages in low light conditions. So low light is a very difficult thing to obtain when you are doing it through film. You'd need a very specific camera to be able to pick up low lighting conditions. So, and the problem with really low lighting conditions is that it becomes extremely grainy. Now, you can use that to your advantage, and I really recommend that you use the tools at your disposal. Your iPhone has a torch on it. You might have a torch lying around. You might have a desktop lamp like this thing, which I'm just using. I'm a lot of what I'm trying to do, apart from having a dimmer next to me, is using lights that are just hanging around the house. Rather than using special theatre lights, because you'll be like, oh yeah, Jace, that's great. But, you know, I don't have a whole arsenal of great theatre lights that I can use. So I've tried to keep it as simple as I can. So I might as well just keep that like that. So why darkness? Why light? Really, what does darkness mean? What when I say darkness, what comes to mind for people? What kind of thoughts come to mind? What kind of images?
Mystery.
Sorry, what was that?
Like mystery or intrigue from darkness?
Yes, Jimmy. Yep. I'm going to point. When reading the script for Orion, I was looking at because I work as a designer. So immediately when I pick up a script, I'm starting to look for clues to how I would operate here. For me, yes, darkness is it's a lot of things, and without wanting to prompt too much, I mean, the little notes that I wrote down for myself is unconscious, primordial, before life. The moon, even though the moon exists in the darkness, we have this strange reflected light of the sun. It's not the sun being the opposite, the sun being lightness, the sun being consciousness, life, sun, warmth, whereas darkness, unconsciousness, primordial, before life, moon, coldness. Now, throughout Jeanette Winterson's Orion, there are constant references to light and night and morning. So, for example, words like wild night, morning, evening, shadowy, lost sight of in the darkness, waited in the dark. In a night, 200,000 years can pass. And a beautiful description, a black cloak pinned with silver brooches that never need polish. And also watching the night fade and the stars fade and the first blue-grey slate the sky. Throughout the short story, the most dominant images that are being described through there are that of cold night and morning and evening, the losing of the light. Now, rather than looking at light in that purely binary sort of darkness and light, we also have, of course, all the middle places, which are, for most lighting designers, a really fun place to play with. So that morning and that evening light, playing with that sense of what is about to happen. Light is fading, or the darkness is being lifted by the light. Even in Winterson's short story, at the very end, when Artemis is, or the narrator is describing the day that follows after Orion's death, it is a stormy day with black clouds and thick orange. So again, there's nothing in this text that suggests a bright sunny day, that light. It suggests a kind of a nether region, a strange place, almost before time. It's the time of the gods, so it's sort of before mortal time. So in thinking of the why, with reference to this, because I thought I'd make direct reference to the work that we're going to be looking at. There's a lot of whys in there. Why would we use light in this this piece? Well, because we want to see it. We could listen to you, but it's almost a primordial light, which is what I feel. I don't know what you read from it, but again, I'm very much used to sort of looking at descriptions of light as a lighting designer in the text that I'm looking at. Certainly, working as a designer, one of the first things you're going to want to talk to the director, if you're working with them, is what their vision of the piece is, after having read it or looked at the subject matter that you'll be focusing on. But you're designing for your own work. So I'm just trying to give you I suppose, a principle or a sort of a plan, a map, from where to start to get to the end. Because it's quite often with designers and creatives, it's really interesting to know where they start from. What's their very start point? Sometimes it can just seem all big and overwhelming, and actually just heading into the why are we creating, why the light, looking at the text to give you those hints, and then we move on to the next circle, which is how the light. And I've already kind of described many of the things of the how. Is it a bright, intense light, like you're seeing on me now, or is it more we'll get rid of that one. Even that one, again, it becomes darker and darker. We can move, we can sort of play with all sorts of light there. Let's try a bit of backlight. I'm just playing with form there for another piece that I will be describing a little bit later on. But mostly what I'm feeling from this piece is that it is a low light piece. That's what I'm feeling, but you can go, no, I don't think it's a low light piece, Jason. I think it's actually quite bright and light. I just want to, I'll always come back to, with designers, ask them, okay, why do you think that? I'm coming back to the center of the bullseye. Why do you think those things? And it's sort of a dramaturgical understanding of why you do a thing. Why? Because it exists direct to ask for, and beyond an audience being able to see it. They're all the practical elements. We're talking about the actual philosophy of why we need light and what kind of light is that. So how do we do that? How, for example, if I've decided that, okay, it's a light piece, there's so many descriptions of evening, shadowy. How do I get shadow? How do I play with these sorts of things? It's going to be tricky if I walk around with my iPhone in the middle of the day to be able to do that, unless it's incredibly dark outside. But even then, the lens is going to adjust. So how I would do that, I would have to maybe choose when in the day I would do that. You're going to have, if you need a lot of light, the day is a great time to be doing work. If you don't want a lot of light and you need to control it, then the evening time is the best time for you. So with how, when I was drawing those circles for you, when it comes to lighting design, it's also sort of where is a very important one of those questions that needs to be added into there. So how do we create the light? Okay, we use a low light. Where do we place it? Because all lights need to be placed in a certain place. They need to be placed in a rig, something like that. So that's something to consider. Now, obviously, I've got to, if I'm directing you to set up lighting at home, probably the most important thing for you is to sort of safely set up the lights at home. If you choose to be using lights. So you find a secure place. At the moment, I have a light clamped to the ceiling directly above my head. I know how to rig things, so I feel comfortable with that. I'm not telling you guys to do that. But if you have, overhead light, you can use it. But most house lighting is designed to throw a lot of light everywhere. So you have nice, as again I can see, and behind you, Bella, you're the light that's coming in. Is that coming from a ceiling light? Is that? Yeah, it looks. It's just throwing light, or yeah, it's throwing light everywhere as it's supposed to. In performance, what we're really trying to control light to make it do the things that we want it to. Now that's tricky for you because you don't have a dimmer and you don't have shutters and barn doors on all your lights. So you need to sort of find trickier ways of doing things. Sometimes, for example, where's my tinfoil gone? You can, it's fairly safe to, if you've got a light like this, to put a tinfoil over the pot. Actually, I'll put a hole in it and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm sort of mucking around a little bit more with some slightly reflected light there. That's relatively safe. I mean, as long as you've got a low wattage, you don't need a lot of bright light when you're creating low light conditions for filming. You really, because your lenses are they're all going to adjust very, very quickly for it. Even then, that's a lot of light coming through there. That's a fairly tiny hole, and it just sneaks through. In a theatre realm, that probably wouldn't be enough light, but in filming, that's plenty of light. So how are you going to do this? I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about that. And what I will get you to do between this week and next week is to create an inventory of things that you have available to you, such as, do you have a torch? I mean, you do, if you've probably got a smartphone, you're going to have a torch on there, but you might be using it to film you, so that's going to be difficult. Do you have some desk lamps? How do you, I mean, unlike me, you can't do this kind of thing. That's very hard for you to do that. But you can use things like baking paper and things like that on front of the light, which will diffuse the light. And I can use a piece of plastic here. If I have bright light, and I put plastic in front of it, that can start to adjust. I'll bring that light back up again. It's a bit bright. You can diffuse the light a bit more. All these sorts of tricks. So yeah, how do you place light in the space? You need to control where it goes. You need to control your audience's visions of what you're doing. And if you're not going to do that, you must be making a choice not to do that. You must be making a choice to throw all those things away. One thing I suppose that I'm good at teaching is a very traditional way of creating light in filming. How we generally light a subject is to use what probably a number of you know as 3-point lighting. So, and I use it actually, it's very much used in film, but I use it in the principles of this in theatre anyway. So I'm always trying to figure out what is the key light. At the moment, sitting in this space, the key light is coming from this desk lamp that's directly in front of me. And generally, your key light does come from the front. Now, this is highly problematic when you sit down to a Zoom meeting and everybody has a windows behind them. So the key light is behind the subject, and so all you see is a silhouette. I don't see your face. I don't see a lot of detail very much. Freya, you've got some good side light coming in on you there. So your key light is obviously coming from your left. Through a window, I'd say. You don't get that kind of brightness, just with a torch. Where Sam, your light seems to be very low. It's coming up almost from underneath you. So it could be the desktop. It could be light bouncing off some kind of surface. I'm not sure. And I'm just dealing with the people I'm seeing in the first screen. Stephanie and Bella, you've got light behind you, so you've got a dark in front of you. Let's see who's on. Oh, no, it's nobody. They're the only people I can see. Okay, back to me. So that's why I'm describing the light. Oh, Alexandra, you've got your light coming from your right-hand side there, through the window there. Teresa, you've got light coming from the front. So yeah, your light source your window must be in front of you there. Again, the sun is a powerful, powerful tool. I was trying desperately to cut it out because I found this really cool way of playing with low light, but I just couldn't emulate it because the light kept sneaking in through little cracks there. It was coming from my east is in that direction. So it was sneaking in through the window, even though I've got a big black curtain up there. It still came in. It's a little bit better than it is now. So key lighting, back to key lighting. So my key lighting is coming from the front there. Which is, if you have a single point of light, what you're going to get is shadow, as you can see on that side of my face. I'll even turn the top light off there because that's cheating a little bit. And I'll turn. Is it that one? No, which one? That one. Okay, just that one. That's all I want. Okay. So it's coming from the front. If I want to, the second light that you have is what is called the fill light. Now, fill light is if you don't want shadows so much, and a lot of us, if we only had one light to light ourselves, we would tend to light it pretty much directly in front of us. So we would probably do a little bit more like that. But that makes us look very flat in the space. Side lighting creates nice shapes with the face and the architecture of the face, or the architecture of the set that you're working with, or the furniture. So we tend to use fill light. So there's my fill light on that side. So if I want to even it up, that's probably fairly close. But generally a fill light is, texture is quite good. So we just simply want to stop the black. We want to get me out of the space. And there's the side of my head now. You can see it a bit better. So if you only have one light, you're generally going to put it in front of you. You can, if you only have one light and you don't have the capacity to do a fill light, so a second light in this, you can use something like this, which is a whiteboard. I'll get rid of that light there. So I'll bring this light around here. If I've only got one light, if I bring this light up and out of shot, you'll see that it will reflect some light back on my face. So you can use walls, like white walls are very good for that. If you've only got a single light, but you want to get a bit more definition in your face, you can play with that. I'm just using that. As you see, the closer I get, the more it's like I've got a light coming from this side, but it's just bouncing off there. I remember seeing the production of Orlando and being really struck by the use of reflected light in that show, on the water and in the mirror at the back. I've occasionally done shows. I set myself a task to create a show that was predominantly lit with reflected light. So the light wasn't directly on the subject, the light was bouncing off another surface onto the subject, and that's what the audience was looking at. Which is really fun thing to do. I mean, obviously as a lighting designer, you don't rest on your laurels and you're always experimenting. So if you've only got one light, you can use a reflected surface as if you've got two lights. So you've got your key and your fill light. And then what a lot of places do, traditionally, it was certainly in theatre, I would use a backlighting. You'll probably see it on my shoulder a bit more. At the moment, my face is, because I'm lighting from the side there and the front there. But if I light from the back, you'll start to see, if I bring it up really high, you'll see definition on my shoulder, and the side of my head is a bit bright. So it kind of, having a bit of backlight, as we use in theatre, pops us out of the space a little bit more. It separates us from the back. So earlier on when I was talking about the use of light, you use light to see and you use light not to see. So you can use light to hide a person. They can suddenly appear from the darkness, or they can be sort of well lit from the start. Pop that back down again. So in, I suppose, traditional theatre lighting, and I'll send through what I think is a really good stage lighting guide. It comes from the UK. I've been really looking for something that is very, very simple, and pretty much is probably not American, because we use slightly different terms. We, in Australia, in lighting, we tend to use English terms a lot. So the glossary that's attached at the end of I think it's a PDF, is really accurate to the way Australians talk about light. So, so next week, when we talk a little bit more about the what lights are we're going to use, and I'll give it to you before, so you get to have a little look over that. So it looks at lighting positions, the types of lights that we use. So whether we use, like most of what because you're not going to be using lights that have a lens in them. Most theatre lights have a lens, apart from floodlights. So cyc floods or floodlights are one of the few lights that don't have a lens. Most theatre lights have a lens that will allow us to shape the light in the space. Most of your light is going to be well, you probably won't even have incandescent bulbs anymore, because we've probably moved on to different halogen style bulbs, or more gas filled bulbs and those sorts of things. Not this old. I don't know whether you can see this. It's probably too bright, isn't it? Actually, I'll bring it down really, really low. You might be able to see. You see the filament? That's what I'm playing with here. And most theatre lights, before they became LED, worked with these filaments, tungsten filaments there. That's been a significant change in my life, as we've moved away from those lights into LED technology, which is not always dimmable. So that's why I'm suggesting, if you do need to dim things, maybe a bit of baking paper, which doesn't tend to ignite very much. Again, low wattage things. How are we going, Stacey? We're at 11.
Yeah. So if you've got a couple more minutes. We went a little long on our previous session, so if you can, take another 2 minutes, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. I'll try to wrap it up. But we need to be able, probably the most important tool that we have as a lighting designer is actually language to describe what we intend to create, what we want created, and why we created what we created. And having a glossary or being able to talk about light in a way that other lighting designers and other people can understand is extremely, extremely important. So I will recommend you that attachment. Should I just give it to you, Stacey, or
Yeah, if you send it to me, I'll
if
pop it
if
up on
you've got-
Moodle. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we thought what homework could I give you really in terms of lighting, and so we'll send that guide through on the Moodle. But I also want you to look at the text of Orion, and for you to pick out words or descriptions of things to find that for yourself, not just rely on my reading of the text. So yeah, just to write down some words to start to think about lighting as a component of the creation that you're creating. I mean, obviously, there is sound as the actual performance itself, but lighting in these conditions are going to function to really focus our attention, and it's something that you can play and experiment with as well. I just want you to, again, go back to why are we doing it, how are we doing it. Don't worry so much about the what and the where. We'll get to that point, or when, but because we'll talk about more about that next week. But yeah, just think about lightness, darkness, and the intersection between those two things. In at least on our planet, the morning and the evening, where a lot of the action takes place in Orion. So I'll leave you with that thought. Thanks for listening. I hope it was illuminating. Pardon the pun. I'll leave it there till next week. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Does anybody have any quick questions for Jason that they want to ask now? All right. Okay. Thank you for those claps and thumbs up. That's really cool. Jason, well done. I think you're a pro at this already. Certainly your lighting keeps better than mine. I'm going to have to do something about it.
Thanks. That's all right.
Thanks. Okay, cool. All right. Well, thanks, Jason. I'm going to stop